Tucked away in deepest, darkest Suffolk lies Britain's oldest still-in-use civic building. It's the Guildhall in the town of Bury St Edmunds, and it's been there for 800 years. Although not open to the public at the moment, they do have an exhibition coming up to share their rich history. What they need is a celebrity to endorse it and get the message out there. What they got was me. Sorry about that. Inside the Guildhall are a courtroom, a banqueting room, a Tudor kitchen, and the bit I was interested in, the only surviving Royal Observer Corps operations room in the world. There were once 40 of these rooms scattered throughout the country, acting as a vital link in the defence of Britain throughout the Second World War. Now there's just one left, and I had it to myself for a day. I wasn't entirely alone, though. I had one of the managers there, 2 tame experts, and my wife behind the camera. Here's what happened. So I'm here with Andy and John. First of all, tell me about yourselves. Why did you get into history, and why did you get into this, for example?
Well, I've been doing World War II stuff since probably 1970 something.
Okay.
And it came about when my brother and I found a derelict armoured car in a hedge on a farm.
Yep.
And we managed to buy the thing for scrap money. We restored it, used to take it to shows and stuff like that. So that's where it started.
Right.
So you got an armoured car. What did they wear? What did they do? So you then get the uniform, and it's a slippery slope from there, really.
Yes, tell me about it.
So yes, Observer Corps. I've had an interest in the Observer Corps and other Home Front, ARP, Home Guard.
Yep.
Loads of that sort of stuff. Because it wasn't, when I was sort of got into this, everybody wanted to be a soldier. Mostly American. Then
Yes.
it was British. Then it went back to American. It just changes.
Yeah, this is not the glamorous side, is it? It's not
No,
seen
but
as
the
the
Home
glamorous
Front
side.
thing was sadly ignored. And dealers have got lots of stuff which was cheap. So
Yes.
they bought it. I mean, this was an original tunic which I bought probably 30 odd years ago, maybe more.
It still fits.
As an unissued one, I'm the only person who's ever worn it. And you just build a collection, and then you think, oh, what did they do? And then you try. And this was pre-internet, of course. So you're looking for books and things like that, talking to people. So yes, and then how did I get into this thing? A guy rang me up one day who was a brother of a friend of mine, and he was the guy who was starting this thing. And said, he explained a bit, would I be interested in it? Because through his brother, he knew I knew something about the Observer Corps. So I said, yeah, great, lovely, keep me informed, never heard another word.
Oh, good.
And then he left. And then I got an email from an Air Vice Marshal, Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, I understand you're an expert on the Royal Observer Corps. And in 2 weeks' time, we've got an event there. Can you give the talks? He said, because I did the last one and it was complete chaos. I don't want to do it again. So I came down here. I didn't even know where the Guildhall was.
No.
My partner did, because she was involved with the theatre and they were using the building. So we met him the day before, I think, the Friday we came down. And this was on a Sunday. Met him, really nice chap, totally clued up. And I said, you know, I'm not an expert, but I'll do it, you know. So. And I had 2 weeks to do some research and try and find bits of kit that I had, which was scattered all over the place. So I think I did 4 talks that day to timed audiences.
Yep.
So it started from there, really, and I've been here ever since.
Carried on since. What about yourself, John?
I met Andy in the 16th century at Kenwell Hall, and we got talking about different things. I've done various periods of reenactment, from medieval, from Dark Age, Vikings and Saxon stuff, and then medieval, then Tudor. And you mentioned this place. This is just such a unique thing to be able to come and do things in situ, in the right place, and to explain it to other people. It's such an important thing to be doing. So
it's important to keep going.
I jumped at the chance to come and play.
Excellent. So, big question, what is the ops room? What is the operations room?
Good question. It's where the place where the RAF get the bulk of their information from.
Yep.
In a nutshell. You've obviously got radar on the coast, looking out.
Yep.
But the observer corps did everything once any aircraft had gone across the radar screen. Although the radar, there was another thing I can't come to later. The radar doesn't go right down to the sea.
No.
There's a big gap. Anyway, so the information comes from all these posts. These are marked. They've been marked in different colours, but on a Richard table they wouldn't be in different colours. It's just done so people can see the thing.
Yep.
They're called clusters.
Yep.
There's all in threes apart from two that are in fours. So there's 38 posts in Suffolk.
Yep.
That come here. There are posts further in Suffolk that don't come here. They went down to Colchester.
Yep.
And some of the posts up here are actually in Norfolk, because these are not county lines, these are just arbitrary lines.
No, yeah, that's
So some of the South Norfolk posts come here as well. So the information from people, they could be on top of a building, they could be in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
One or two were on churches, windmills, this sort of thing.
I think there's a famous one on top of Windsor Castle or something, isn't there?
There's one on the tower at Windsor Castle, and it was known for His Majesty the King, Princess Elizabeth, now Queen, and the cousin whose name I can never remember. They would pay periodic visits, and they did that one night in the middle of the V1 campaign.
Yep.
When that building could have been hit by something, and the King and the Queen, Princess Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And they were very knowledgeable on aircraft recognition.
Yes.
Because while they were talking to the guys on the post, there were three of them on that one, Princess Elizabeth looked up at the sky, and this is dark. She said, "Are you going to plot that Stirling going over?" So they had to, quick,
yes.
Quick, we'll sort that out. Yes.
Already done that, yes.
They would do that. And then they would go through the recognition cards, the King and the Princess, and test each other with the things. What's that one, Dad? So yes, that was on the Brunswick Tower.
Yep.
So yes, these people, they were men to start with, would be on these posts 24 hours a day after the war started.
Spotters are indicated on the map in groups of 3 or 4, spaced around 5 miles away from each other. Having multiple spotter groups meant they could talk to each other and work out what they were looking at. This meant greater accuracy of observation and information. These 3 or 4 groups would report to a designated plotter at the table. One plotter for each letter group from A up to M, missing out I, so there were 12 plotters sat around this table. Each spotter station would have had a table like this with a custom Observer Corps plotting device mounted on it. It gave them estimates of height and bearing, and you can see other spotting stations are marked on it, as well as major landmarks to give reference points.
In fact, for 2 weeks in August, they were on the post. The thing is, when it was the crisis.
They were all made ready, weren't they?
So the whole thing was up and running. This was fully staffed and fully operational, but at that time they were only tracking our own aircraft. People think the Observer Corps only tracked enemy aircraft. They didn't. They tracked every single aeroplane that was flying.
Yes.
Which, to start with, wasn't too bad, because you could have one of these ray blacks for every single aircraft.
Yep.
But
by the time you get the big wings.
At the time, when things got a bit bigger, they came into things like, you've got aerial raids and sweep raids.
Yep.
Different system, but you think, so you could track groups of aircraft, and you'd have markers on the corners to track the whole thing.
Yep.
So that's what the Observer Corps did. They were tracking every single aircraft until it went out of their area. And to start with, they only had this table. They did not have the long-range board.
No, that came in
43.
It was 43 as well.
Yeah.
One of my questions later is going to be why did they put that in? Was it just advances in technology, or?
Yes, it sped up the operation.
Right.
One of the people, or even 2 of the people sitting up on this gallery, are connected to other Observer Corps centres.
Right.
Now, there were 40 centres right around the country.
Yeah.
So basically from the Isle of Wight, there was one on the Shetland Islands that had 4 posts. So in theory they're all interconnected, but the line of communication to start with is quite protracted, going from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 all the way down. Which obviously makes things slower. But The people who were intercentre tellers who sat up there had a little switchboard, and they could talk to adjacent centres. So they would tell them if anything that was on our table that's heading their way, like down to Colchester, thing across Cambridge, Bedford.
You're about to get to go down to Colchester.
Yeah, so you're going to get a visit. You know. And the same thing, the intercentre tellers would get the information coming back, which means they have to then tell the raid orderly with bits of paper. So they drop bits of paper down to the raid orderly and say, look, this is coming in. It was quite cumbersome.
So presumably when you got that in, did it have to get a group of people in dedicated to just this and not...
Yes.
So they get something from there and go, right, there's something coming in that way or...
With the long range board, and you've got to bear in mind it's not all there yet, we've got to build the rest of it.
Oh, okay.
There should be a platform either side with a fixed seat on it.
Right.
There's, on this side here, there is another board to go on, which was called the C-plotters board. This was a euphemism for radar.
Yes.
Because that was connected to the radar system.
Yeah.
By the time here, it was the radar that was at Trinity Head, ground control intercept radar. But any coastal centre would have had a C-plotting board on it. So you could have 9 people around this thing.
Wow. You
can work over the top of it. There's all the counter things have got to go on yet. We haven't done that, and the jack plug things. The plotters are here. Just have a headset. That is one of the headsets. They plug the thing in, and they will be, for instance, somebody will be connected to Colchester. Another one will be connected to Norwich, where we've already got a road. We put one up there. So Cambridge, there'll be another one there. Every one of these counties on here. So you're even moving down to London. And this was connected to, well, all of those counties, but it was also connected to Bromley and Watford as well. I know that. So information would come in, so you'd have one person for each piece, really.
Wow.
So you could see at a glance anything that was coming in over land with the radar information and also coastal posts. Bearing in mind we've got coast posts all the way down. And they can see out to the equipment they use, which is that post instrument. There's a thing over there. You could use that out to 10 miles.
Okay.
So on the south coast, you're halfway across the English Channel. And you can see and track aircraft with that coming in from anywhere. So anyway, so that's the information all comes in here. We get information from the RAF as well, so they will tell us here what they're putting up. So we would know, you know, like these are, we put these in here, they're hurricanes and Spitfires, and they're heading off to the Germans that are coming over the coast there. So the information would come from the RAF here. But most of it is done in-house, if you know what I mean.
I was looking at a place in Churchill's history of the Second World War. I think he was in, was it Bentley Priory on the 15th of September?
That's right.
He described it as looking like a theatre. I can sort of see why now. You know, although this is obviously a smaller version.
There's lots of, it would be relatively dark and lots of seats around the edge for people, especially up there observing and looking.
Well, I think actually he was at Uxbridge.
Is it Uxbridge?
Yes, he was Uxbridge.
Right.
Sitting up in the gallery, I don't know if you've ever been there. Have you?
No, I haven't yet.
You go.
It's on the list.
Go. Don't bother with Bentley Priory.
No.
Go to Uxbridge. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And they've now got a massive visitor centre there. Some by the local council. But up in the gallery, there's a curved glass wall.
Right.
Which was actually there during the war.
Okay.
So I don't know how they made a curved glass thing like that. Anyway, he was up there. He used to arrive unannounced, and he turned up with his wife. And Keith Park was there, and this was what they called the longest day, wasn't it?
Yes, became the Battle of Britain Day now.
Yes, well he sat there with his cigar, but he wasn't allowed to smoke it actually. And he turned to Keith Park and said, "What are our reserves?"
None.
And Keith Park said, "There are none."
Yes. And the interpretation of that is some people go, you know, all the aircraft are up, we've got nothing left, you know, but other people going, no, it's deliberate, we've done this because that's the strategic thing to do. No, we've got everything covered. We're okay.
Well, yes, it wasn't every single fibre in the country was up because you had
It
them
was
in
only an 11 group.
12 group,
Yeah.
10 group, 11 group.
Because you're on right on the edge. This is 12 group, isn't it?
This is 12 group, but we are sort of worked with 11.
Right on the edge.
There,
Yeah.
So you've got a crossover here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, the information from here went to Medley Priory.
Mm.
It went to Duxford, Northolt.
Yep.
I only found that out recently because they are restoring the operations room at Northolt.
Ah.
One guy, Philip, is mostly doing it on his own, I think.
Mm.
Absolutely phenomenal. And I'm going to see him at some point.
Because the Air Force would have had their own operations room and plotting tables and things.
They had their own, well, they were sector operation. Duxford had a sector one.
Yep.
Because they've got the recreation there now, which the original one was the buildings on the other side of the road.
Right.
So Debden was a sector. They have a sector operations room. Northolt was a sector operations room.
Yeah.
So the sector ones would control airfields around them.
Right.
So information from here went to Duxford, and it went to Northolt, it went to Debden.
Yeah.
And other places as well. There's a lot of stuff that went out either by landline, because everything was landline, or with teleprinters, and the teleprinter room was just next door here with 2 teleprinters in it.
Next door is a very small room with 2 teleprinters operated by women. One story I was told was that a carbon monoxide vent nearby was deliberately blocked up because it was letting out light during the blackout. Unfortunately, the first people to suffer were the teleprinter operators, who were found collapsed at their posts. They recovered, and alternative light blocking methods were employed.
Yeah. With operators, so the stuff is coming and going through there all the time. Normally they had one coming in and one going out.
Because you had to have these rooms close to a post office telephone exchange.
Yes, which is in next road.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, that's why they put it here.
Very nearby.
Yeah, a lot of the operations rooms were actually built in telephone exchanges if they had a spare room when they set it up.
Makes sense.
Which is like the Watford one because that was up on the roof. But it was an awkward staircase and they couldn't put a long range board up there, so they had to build a complete new operations room.
Wow.
And the Bromley one was bombed, that was destroyed, and they had to build a new one for that.
Yeah.
Or use another building if they could.
So this is the only surviving Observer Corps operations
This is
room
the only surviving
in the country. Out of, how many was it? 30?
There was 40 of them.
40?
Yeah, most counties had one, Yorkshire had 2.
Yeah.
They were in the same building, it was a long wooden hut.
Yeah.
And if that had gone, the whole of Yorkshire would have been knocked out.
Yeah.
So they had East Yorkshire in one end of it and West Yorkshire in the other end of it.
Suddenly go dark.
And that was run as 2 separate things.
Yeah.
But you know, some of them were damaged, but you know, set on fire, and then the crews in would have to leave the table and go and put the fire out if they couldn't get the fire brigade.
Coventry, didn't they get a commendation after the big Coventry road because they just carried on even though they can see everything's on fire around.
Yeah, well, everybody carried on. The one at Bromley, they were still working on the table and bits of burning ceiling were dropping on it. And the duty controller told them, half of them to leave and go to the backup, because every centre had a backup.
Yeah.
And Bury was the same, there was a backup in the town centre. So then they used, in Bromley, they used that table for as long as they could. And the duty controller in the end, they said, right, grab what you can, and we're going. And as he went out the door, the whole ceiling came down on top of the table. The building was completely burnt out, there was nothing left.
Yeah. And that's why you have
and that was a nice big country house.
Was.
But you know, that's what happens in a war. Things that happen. But yeah, the people in here would keep going. You know, until they physically could not use the system anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, the telephone lines would go out of action. There is one of the people set up there is a post controller.
Yeah. And
it was their job to make sure the posts were all working efficiently. And if it was quiet, the tellers on here would call the post. But this is one of the boxes they used. It's called the plotting control.
I was going to say, yeah, because you've got plotters and tellers.
You've got plotters sit here.
Yep.
And the tellers sit up the top there. So this is I've built 4 4 of these, because we're going to replace these eventually. There should be 12, so we've got to build some more. In fact, we're going to build 2 sets, because this is a working one.
Right.
The ones that will be on here won't be. But when we come in with a crew, we'll bring all the stuff just to swap everything out.
Yeah.
They just clip on, the same as the original ones, they will do. And we can actually run this as a live scenario.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll have a real outside information coming in.
Right.
Via some very technical stuff. There's some guys up at Dundee who've got the sort of semi-underground thing, where they're restoring that. They've got some really clever people.
So there's an Airbus coming out of Heathrow.
And we've yet to work out how it's going to work.
Well,
they already have little groups with the underground posts, the postal things.
Yeah.
Where on a Sunday they'll all get together, and by using mobile phones and this little box that these people in Dundee have invented, that joins a thing called the Teletalk, that's a VT bit of kit.
Yeah.
They can actually talk to each other wherever they are around the country, and we can link into that system, because they'll make me the integrated bit, so we can then just run it off a mobile phone. And then the information up there, the guy who sits there, or could be later on in the day, is the main teller, and that person is connected to the table at Bentley Priory in the filter room.
Yeah.
So they use the same counters and everything as we do in the filter room. That's not the ones you push with sticks, which is what.
This is why I was sort of surprised at the size of it, because it is, you can reach across the table.
Yeah,
there's none of that.
No, the
which is what you think in the films.
The table at Uxbridge is 5, maybe 6 times this size. Massive, great thing, and it's on a slope, so the people in the gallery can see it, and that's the reason for the curved screen. You don't get reflection.
Right.
So the WAFs who were around there would be able to push things like that. But on here you can just reach across.
Yeah. I was going to say, on the subject of the size of the map, what scale is it?
Well, these are 10 kilometre squares.
Okay, it's in kilometres, not
They're in kilometres.
miles. Okay.
Now, that's an odd thing really, because the mapping system they use for this is the modified British grid mapping system.
Yeah.
Which changed post-war to GeoRef, which is what they use now.
Right.
It was a matter of moving north, I think.
Yes.
So these are all 10 kilometre squares.
Okay, right.
Which is an odd thing. And on the post table, you can see one on the wall there.
Yeah. If we sort of go from the beginning, so how does it work? Say a report comes in, say this group of Heinkel's coming in, where does it start? How does it work from the word go sort of thing? As it were.
Right. From our point of view, we may get information from the RAF and their radar system.
Yep.
That comes in. And you've got to bear in mind, this evolved from 1935, 1939, even earlier, up to 43, where we are with this building as it stands. So some information would come in from radar, but you've also got the various posts along the coast, which are marked there. So they can see right out to sea, depending on the weather conditions, but you can use the post instrument for 10 miles out in any direction. So they would see aircraft coming in. They might not be able to identify them at that point, but the RAF may have said there is a raid coming your way, and they will have given us the raid numbers, which are on this one, 51 and 53.
Yeah.
Presumably somewhere there's a 52, but that's not on our table at the moment. Could have gone somewhere else. So that we would have that knowledge of that information. We could then warn the posts and that there's a raid heading in their direction.
Yeah.
Which is fine till it goes over the coast.
Yeah.
And then the radar loses it. So from there on, the tracking is all done from these posts, which are in these little clusters.
Yep.
That information comes to the 12 plotters sitting around the table, who then move the raid plaques and the coloured arrows in accordance with the clock, which is up there.
Yep.
Now that is the later clock. There were 2 clocks. There was a 5-minute clock beforehand, but by 43 they were using the 2.5-minute clock because the aircraft had got faster.
Set up, yeah.
So that is the later clock. The other one's actually on so what happens is the raid will move across the board.
Yep.
Heinkel. So you're looking probably 300 miles an hour.
Is it did they use a green one for where they started plotting it, or?
They have it, yeah. Our first one, you have a green arrow goes down.
Yeah.
which we've got. But
Your green arrow goes down for the first track.
Yes.
But as time moves on, an orderly will come around and will clear up the table. So your green one and any subsequent ones will disappear right up until the last few seconds.
that way you can tell, A, it doesn't clutter the table,
Yep.
you end up with coloured snakes all over the
It'll
place.
be snaking all over the place.
And you know how old the raid is.
Right.
Now, if the raid changes directions, this lot are sort of chumping along here quite happily, but then they decide they're going to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
They put one on down.
We change the direction, yeah.
Now that is done so that the teller up there knows something has happened,
Right.
because the main teller is reporting this information all the time. Now, they are only reporting things, not every aircraft movement. So they report these ones because they're hostile.
Yep.
The teller up there will not be reporting the position of these ones.
No.
Because we're seeing the RAF know where they are. Now, if the RAF don't know where they are, if they sent a flight up and it's got lost,
Yep.
which happens quite a lot, sent the wrong direction or something, then the RAF will ask us where fighter group number 26 is.
Yep.
So what we will do then is change the counter to a white one. Then the teller knows to track that one,
Keep an eye on it.
but they won't track that one until they know where they are, they're happy with it, and they'll just say stop tracking that one, so the counters go back.
And in theory, the RAF had the huff duff, didn't they? Which was it sent a ping
Yes.
every 14 seconds or something,
Yes.
wasn't it? And that, in theory, that let you know.
It's a directional thing, but
Yeah.
they were known to turn them off.
Yes. Well, it's annoying having
There was an off switch.
a ping. Yeah, it's annoying having a ping in your.
And there was also some sort of, obviously the Germans could track those things because the radio signal. So anyway, so that's why you've got different colour counters.
Yep. So every hour is, in this case, 2.5 minutes.
Every 2.5 minutes the colour changes.
Mm.
So whenever a plotter gets information from one of their
Yep.
posts, they look either at the clock or they'll look at the lights directly above them,
Coloured lights.
and that will tell you which sector we're in.
I was going to say, I've got spotted those. I wonder what we're.
Yeah, we haven't got them. They don't actually operate as they should.
No.
We've discovered.
Right.
Yeah, they should go in time with the sectors, but unfortunately the modern circuit that's been fitted to make it work is a little bit intermittent. So
Right, okay.
So that doesn't work with the clock, unfortunately. But there we go. So that's it. So these things will be tracked to wherever they're going. When, hopefully, in this case, the two groups get to meet, so the Spitfires will go after the MU-109s.
Yep.
And the
Hurricanes
Hurricanes
will go after the Heinkels.
would go after the Hurricanes. And when you get to there, then it obviously gets a bit of a job to trap them.
Yeah.
So at that point, you take the hostile thing off and you put an M on there, which means mix up.
Mix up, right. I was trying to look at it.
So the whole thing's mixed up. So there's a big battle going on.
Yep.
Sort of.
I was expecting like an E for engaged or something.
No, just mix
mixed.
up.
Excellent.
So there's a big battle going on south of Beccles.
Yeah.
And this lot are going to be doing the same thing at some point soon.
I did hear that they like people from the stock exchange for the plotters because they're very quick. They're used to the information coming in and out very quickly. And
Yes, as time went on, it got very difficult, complicated. More aircraft flying slightly faster.
Yeah.
And if you've got a raid of 200 aircraft, so you can't plot each single aircraft. So there is a technique whereby you can plot groups of aircraft.
Yeah.
Which is how they used to do it.
So the 1,000 bomber raids later on, you're kind of thinking, no, just don't try.
Yes, they used to stream across here.
Yeah.
From up in Lincolnshire and Yorkshire and things like that. And it'd be a constant stream of aircraft going over at night.
Yeah.
So you can't plot each single aircraft.
No.
So, but you can block groups of them.
Yes.
So there's loads of different techniques of doing different things on this table. It is quite amazing actually what you can do. So, but that is basically how it happens. The posts would report the position of aircraft. They come into these plotters. So each one has got 3 or 4 posts to control. So that's what happens actually on the table. You've got the main teller reporting to the RAF the stuff they need to know.
Yeah.
You've got the guy who sits with that slope thing is. There's a table that fits on there,
Yeah.
which I made one, so we've got one we can use. And he would record the track of everything that goes across this table.
Mm-hmm.
And when that piece of paper gets so it's not recognisable, they start a new one. So they have an assistant who sits next to them.
Yeah.
And at midnight, every night, they start a new series.
Mm.
So they're all numbered and timed. And then that information is sent to the RAF.
Right.
So they've got a track of should they need it, and there are occasions when they've needed it. They know exactly what happened when, where an aircraft was or whatever, their own or an enemy one. The person who sat here was possibly not an Observer Corps person, could be from the Ministry of Home Security.
Right.
And there's a switchboard on there, and they would be connected to all the emergency services.
Right.
So you've got the fire service, you've got police,
Yeah.
air raid wardens, utility companies.
It's referred to as customers, isn't it?
Yeah, they're customers.
The customers of who needs to know what.
Who needs to know what?
So-called customers could include the RAF, the Home Guard, the Fire Brigade, air raid wardens, the police and many more. All of them depended on the Observer Corps spotters, plotters and tellers for their information. To that end, all ROC centres had to be close to and in contact with a General Post Office exchange building. Berries is around 100 yards away.
So that would be that. So there could be a guy in a suit, or it could be an Observer Corps, or it could be an ex-Observer Corps thing moved on, they retired or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they sat there, and if a raid was coming this way, then he would start notifying everybody who needed to know.
Right.
And you could do it off the switch, but you could do it all simultaneously, or you could do it individually, or different people at different times.
Mm.
So that's what he did there. So you've got the main teller there, you've got interceptor tellers sitting there,
Yeah.
who are liaising with other groups.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who sat here,
Above the lights.
above the lights, is a duty controller.
Right.
So that person, it could be a man or a woman, here it was a man, is in control of the whole thing. They're in charge.
Yeah.
And then they've got an assistant,
Mm-hmm.
because it can get quite busy with stuff they have to do. Then you've got the post controller, who looks after the well-being of all the posts. So if a post is not responding, because the phone line's damaged, that's his job to get onto the telephone engineers,
Yeah.
who would send a man out on a bicycle with a ladder on his shoulder, and he would go and find a break and
And a set of pliers.
yes, join it back together or whatever. That was the post controller's job. And then you had, of course, up here the guy who's connected to the radar system.
Wow. So how many people would you have in here at one time?
About 30.
About 30.
Yeah, because you've got two Teleprinter operators as well.
Yeah.
You've got 12 plotters around here. This time you could have 9 people on there if you work out the thing. You've got 2 raid orderlies
Yeah.
who are making up the raid packs, keeping the table clear. You've got the floor supervisor who, in that picture over on there, is a guy called Putt.
Right.
That's his nickname, and that's his jacket
Yeah.
in there, and his beret. And he was the floor supervisor, so he would just keep things going along. If these ladies or gents wanted a break or something, he could take over. You can actually connect these boxes together,
Right.
which is what these switches, you've got different switches on here for different jobs. Some of them only work one way, like these two are interconnecting ones.
Mm-hmm.
So with the connections under the table, if the person using this one is sitting next to somebody who needed to do blue break or something,
Mm-hmm.
they could flick their thing over and take control of their set of
Right.
boxes.
Okay.
Or you could do it on both sides. One of this one is you can talk to the post controller,
Mm-hmm.
and
And all the officers in here, they've all got the headsets and.
they've all got these are the head and breast sets. So
Yeah.
everybody in
Your
here
clients.
around the table is wearing these. The tellers up there are all wearing them.
Yeah.
Duty control has a telephone. They have coloured light things. They don't have bells and things on the things because
No.
they're just too noisy.
Well, yeah.
And he's got his own little switchboard. There's lots of switchboards up there, of different sorts. And then say the long range board, people have got just a headset because all their information's coming inwards. You don't need to talk to anyone.
They're talking, they're just doing, listening and doing. I tend to think in army terms, I was in the TA briefly. I'm just thinking a platoon of people all in here all at once, and the echo and just,
Well,
I've got the computers, I think.
People would think it was a noisy thing, but it wasn't a noisy environment. You just had a work shut up.
Yes. I briefly worked as a teacher.
You don't need to shout down these microphones, they work really well. I've got 6 or 7 in that bag that actually work, that does work, it's been tested, it's worked. I've got a load at home that I'm building them from spare parts because they're trying to get hold of, or I don't know whether they work, I've got to test them. Because we're going to have each, eventually, all these boxes, the 12 boxes that will be working. Wow. So the person up there actually will be able to talk via a switchboard, which I've got, to each of the people down there, and they can give them information, just so we can run it like it would.
So presumably the busiest time was the Battle of Britain?
No, the Battle of Britain, that was busy, but they got worse after because the Americans came over, didn't they, in 1942?
And they got,
and brought tens of thousands of aircraft in. Something. Because you're tracking the American stuff as well.
Yeah.
You're tracking everything. So then you suddenly got, you've got Spitfires and you in mind, but then suddenly you've got B-17s and Liberators and Mustangs and all sorts of stuff.
Wow. So in my head I thought that all the engagements in the Battle of Britain, but I suppose if you're tracking the home.
The Battle of Britain was, well, the first actual engagement was the Battle of Barking Creek, wasn't it?
Right.
Do you know about that one?
No, only vaguely.
That was a mess. Sadly, one pilot was killed. A group of Hurricanes were coming back from
this is a Hurricanes versus Spitfires thing, isn't it?
And then the Spitfires were told that they were enemy.
Yes.
The Observer Corps identified them as Hurricanes and reported, although they weren't quite where they were supposed to be.
Right.
But the Observer Corps reported a flight of Hurricanes coming back. But for some reason, it left the Observer Corps. But the RAF didn't do something with it that they should have done. And the radar reported it as an enemy flight. Yeah. They put these Spitfires up who attacked the Hurricane, shot 2 of them down, killed one of the pilots, the other one bailed out and survived. Wow. Before the Spitfire pilots realised they were shooting Hurricanes down.
Yeah, well I suppose moving that fast, it's just an aircraft, you've been told it's an enemy, so you start shooting.
Yeah, so because of adrenaline and hype up and everything else, I think this was the first lot of...
So the numbers on the tokens, so we've got 51 is...
That's the raid number.
Raid number.
That would have come from the RAF.
Yep. If
later on in the war you have the rats, I haven't got a B, or a C. No, I've got one on there. Anyway, because the radar didn't go right down to the sea, it can't go right down because you get reflections back.
It's like 1,000 feet or something.
It's about 1,000 feet or so. But the Jerrys knew this because they had their own radar system. So they would fly underneath the radar. So the RAF, the Observer Corps came up with a system called RATS. So on coastal posts, they'd see these things coming in at wave top height. We would have no warning of those.
No.
So what would happen in that case, instead of having what you might do, we would assume it was hostile because we don't know anything different. Put a plain yellow thing on. Or you could have one, I think we've got one with an X on it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sure it's hostile, but it needs to come a bit closer.
Yeah. That's the raid number. So the 60 is...
So that's the number of aircraft.
Okay, so 60 aircraft.
And that's the height. 4,000 feet.
4,000 feet, right. Okay. And then you can change that as if...
We can change that. That can change within a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, that 60 might split off into 2 groups, in which case you have to put another raid plaque in.
I was going to say, if you've got a Stuka, it's going to change height very quickly.
Well, yes, yeah, they do. But that's the mean height they're flying at.
Yes.
They may go up, they may go down.
And then once they're engaged, they can go anywhere.
Well, when they go, yes.
Wow. It is all very clever. It's
a very, very clever system. It's fairly complicated. I mean, they had 2 weeks training.
I don't want to use the word board game, but it is a bit like a board game.
It is a board game.
You feel like you want to do it, so you understand the rules once you've had a go.
Yes. Yeah, effectively it is a board game, but there's a lot at stake if you lose.
So you said this carried on. So you said, I think you said something about this carried on until like 6 days after the war or something. The room itself.
Yes, 12th of May.
Right.
5 o'clock. They stood down. They turned all the phone lines off.
So from August.
It was 6 days before the war started.
Yep. So August 1940 up to the 12th of May, this room was permanently occupied.
Permanently occupied,
by
7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
How long was a shift?
It varies. You could have an 8 or a 10-hour shift. You could have a half-day shift. You could have a morning shift, go home, and then come back in the evening.
Yeah.
I have a shift programme for a lady who actually sat on that corner there, called Jane,
Right.
who I interviewed at length. And she was interviewed for this. We haven't got her voice on the soundtrack. So.
Excellent.
But I went to her house
Mm-hmm.
and had a long chat with her. And I've got her duty shift. She can still remember it.
I suppose if you do it
For the whole week, which
Yeah.
what day she did.
How long was she in here for?
No, I think that was 43. She was 17 when she came in.
Blimey.
I've met and talked to 3 of the lady plotters from here.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're all dead now, unfortunately. They all came in at 17.
Wow. I suppose the pilot time much more than that.
No, and she came because her friend was in the WAF, but she didn't want to move away from home, but she liked the uniform. So she joined the corps. She's an amazing lady because we put her down here. She picked up the headset because that was with I think we had the other table. We had our table. We moved that one out, tipped it on the side and covered it up.
Yep.
Brought our table in so we could have the boxes on it. So we had a box here because we knew she was coming. She was on dog position, which is D here to here. And the headset was there, so she sat down, put it on. And she was plotting stuff across the table.
Yeah, it all came flooding back.
And I noticed she'd gone from here. And I said to somebody, has Joan gone home? I said, no, she's up there.
She never saw it from up there, I suppose.
Yeah, she became a teller.
Ah, okay.
Because she had a nice clear voice.
Right.
So she got promoted from plotting to telling. So she sat up there, and that's where she was sat.
Wow.
Still with the headset on, because we had some headsets up there.
Was she here for 43 up to the end of the war?
Up down into the wall, yes.
Wow. Anything else to add down here? Either of you want to say?
Well, I mean, yes, what else would they do with this table? It's not just tracking enemy aircraft.
Right.
The Observer Corps were given lots of other jobs. And we'll use this camera. One of the big jobs they were given later on in the war was getting damaged bombers back home.
Yep.
And that came about after one night when the RAF lost a lot of aircraft when they got back here and couldn't find anywhere to land. So that all you can do is point the thing out to where you think the sea is and jump out.
Yep.
But of course, I hope the parachute works because you've only got one.
Yep.
So you can imagine that sort of carnage that caused, because the crew would be spread over a reasonable area.
Yep.
They may be injured when they land.
Yep.
You've got to find the crew because they might not know where they are. Well, they almost certainly won't know where they are. And you've lost a certain number of aircraft that were perfectly serviceable.
Yeah.
So they came up with 2 systems, one of which was called Sandra. I don't know somebody's wife's name,
Probably,
I don't know, which involved searchlights. So if at night a bomber was in trouble, it would fly around in a circle and a post would pick it up. And if the aircraft thought it was safe to do so, it would flash SOS on its navigation light.
Yep.
But that's risky because if there's night fighters about, you're a target. So what would happen then is a green counter would go down, there for example.
So roughly in the middle of the circle.
It's where this plane is circling.
Yeah.
So, and that takes priority over everything after that. And the idea is to get this plane to land somewhere and get the crew back. So the plane won't know where it is, because if it doesn't, that's why it's lost.
Yeah.
It could be that the radio operator and navigator are wounded, dead, the radio equipment's all been shot up, the navigation gear doesn't work.
Because all the airfields are blacked out.
The airfields are all blacked out.
Yeah.
So this thing, he thinks he's over the country, he's flying around in a circle going, I'm going to run out of fuel in an hour, or half an hour or whatever. So anyway, the observer corps will pick this thing up and think, right, we've got that would be reported into the RAF. The RAF may try and get hold of them on a radio, if the radio doesn't work, then you're stuck. So what they would do is, several posts across the country were equipped with a searchlight.
Right.
Which means you've got extra crew and you've got a big generator, 3-cylinder listed usually with a searchlight.
Yep.
And they would light this thing up and put the beam straight up in the air. And as the plane's flying around, it'll see a searchlight that's not moving. And it's not on a plane, because it could be other searchlights.
Yeah.
So it'll fly to that one, it'll fly around this thing, in the vicinity of it. And then what will happen is another one will be put up.
Right.
And this was all coordinated by the observer corps.
So the observer would say, okay, he's over my beam now.
He's here,
Next one,
let's get him to the next one, to the next airfield. Because ideally you want one that's got some sort of lighting system. Now you've got to bear in mind, most of them, there was only certainly 2, or 3 actually, that had electric light. One of those was at Woodbridge, because that was the emergency landing ground, so you might try and get him there. But if he's already gone past that one, you're not going to try and get him there. The other ones they had were things like a watering can with a wick full of paraffin, and some would have to run down the runway lighting these things. And of course, once the plane was down, they'd have to go and put them out.
Yes.
Horrible job. But so they would fly that till they got it back to where it was going. And then the RAF would have one on the end of their runway. They'd put that up, and then when the plane got there, they'd lay it down so it could the runway. And get the thing down. And we know of a Sterling that went through here that was shot to pieces. And it had come off from the continent and it was tracked across Suffolk. And it was guided and it eventually came down at Elmsall, which I think is Lincolnshire or somewhere that way. Completely safe, you know, the crew survived and the plane got back and everything. And that would almost be a nightly occurrence that this sort of thing would happen. And at the end of the war, somebody, with nothing better to do, worked out that the Observer Corps saved around 16,000 aircrew lives and between 3,000 and 4,000 aircraft.
Wow.
By getting them back. Now the other system they had involved a wireless set called a darky set. So they put these in the bombers, but they only had a range of about 10 to 15 miles. So some Observer Corps posts would have these radio sets, wireless sets, and with a great long dipole aerial put up, masts and all this sort of stuff. And if you were lost and the darky set was working, you could call out hello darky, and then a post may or may not hear it. Some RAF stations had them. I know Lavenham Airfield, which is, I think they had a darky set there. So either an RAF or an Observer Corps would pick this thing up and would give them a heading to go to get to an airfield, to get down. And again, you could send the aircraft from set to set across.
Yeah, similar things that I was reading yesterday, where you got the fighters trying to attack the bombers on the ground, and they black out the airfield as soon as the spotting post says enemy fighter. They go right, dark airfield. He's gone, light it up. Blank takes off. He's coming back. Switch it off.
Well, that happened again through here. There was a bomber stream coming back, and they were being guided back to their airfield. And the posts picked up the sound of a German aircraft amongst them. Now this was pitch black, so they do it.
It's by sound.
Everything you can track on this thing by day, you can track by night using sound. It's not as good, but it's
best
quite effective. And you've got different counters. These shield ones. So you consider those things if you were at night. You'd be using these.
And it was accepted that it was only an estimate.
It was.
The Air Force knew it was. Best guess.
It was best guess, but the guys on the ground were really good at identifying aircraft. They could work out the height. You can use the post instrument to gauge roughly the height. The thing that's flying about at. And the direction, you know which direction it's going. So you've got a lot of information the RAF can use. Not as good if you can't see them, but the idea being, and the Observer Corps were actually quite good at doing this, they would guide a British night fighter onto the Germans. Because once night fighters have got airborne radar on them, So if you could get the German plane and the British plane within range of this airborne radar, and we know this happened through here, there's a night fighter in the bomber stream, and the bomber streams were going back. So the observer corps, I mean, after it went through here and it was tracked, there was a German aircraft in it, but it went beyond this. They were going up to Lincolnshire or Yorkshire or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, once they got up there, the post up there was still tracking this German plane, and they would say, "Okay, right, he's flown off now. You can light up."
Yeah.
So presumably that airfield had electric lights; they could turn them on, and the bombers would start coming down. Well, of course, the German flying about would see the runway, like, "Ha ha! Right, he's off."
Yep.
Then they turn, they're right.
He's coming back, switch it off.
He's coming back, switch it off.
Yep.
So the British planes are still flying around in the dark with the German plane. Well, he's lost the sight of the radio, where the airfield is now.
Pitch black.
So he's flying off trying to find this thing. Okay, you could get a few more, and over the course of time, they got a few, could get them down.
Yep.
Meantime, they put a Mosquito up.
Okay.
Night fighter.
Yeah, yeah.
So the observer corps then were obviously tracking the Mosquito and the German plane, and they brought the two together, and the Mosquito shot the German plane down, and it went down into the wash.
Yep.
And that was the end of him.
That was the end of him.
Many of the Observer Corps officers had been in the forces previously. The officer in charge of the Bury St Edmunds operations room throughout the war was Captain F.T. Bright, who'd been awarded a Distinguished Flying Cross in the First World War. For his services to the country in the Second World War, he was awarded an MBE. Other awards handed out to Bury St Edmunds observers included a Commendation and a British Empire Medal.
So, Louisa, have we decided what your job title is?
Assistant manager.
Assistant manager, there we go. It's nice to get to a position where you can choose your own job title. So you're sort of in charge of the whole thing. You've got an exhibition coming up.
Indeed we do.
Which is?
So Ration Books for Rock and Roll.
Yep.
Fantastic exhibition covering the full active service years of the Observer from 1939 up to 1954.
Excellent.
So that's looking into all of the amazing people that worked here, as Andy's explained. Incredible people, dedicated, talented, clever, quick, and
Unsung Heroes, I think, is the expression.
Definitely the expression. And this is telling their story, which is really unknown, forgotten, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah.
And it's celebrating their contribution to the war, celebrating the unique space we've got here, and the wider social history of Bury and Suffolk in general at the time. So that's running 26th of March, Saturday 26th of March to Sunday the 10th of April, with the Oxford Open, Andy and his colleague John doing their reenactment bits, various other fantastic partners working with us on displays and events, activities for all ages, and it's going to be amazing.
So Bury St Edmunds, Guildhall, 26th of March.
10th of April.
10th of April.
Put it in your diary.
Put it in your diary, be there. We'll be here, in fact.
Yeah.
So that's how a Royal Observer Corps operations room worked during the Second World War. As the only one left in the country, it really is of national importance. My thanks go to Louisa, Andy and John at the Guildhall for hosting us for the day. If you can get down there during their exhibition, it would help them out greatly. I will put a link in the description below where you can find out more, as well as a list of open days. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.